first martyr of the Christian church, or the early church. And we looked at last week his death, being stoned to death by religious leaders and the mob, simply because Stephen was a faithful Christian. And in that faithfulness, he went and taught the gospel, shared the gospel, ministered the gospel. And they couldn't stand it. So they gathered and they stoned him to death. As we will see, kind of moving this point forward, that in God's gracious sovereignty and providence, this death, this horrible, violent death of Stephen, serves as a tipping point for the church. Now, there are those on one side, those are the religious leaders whose father is Satan, that they see this as a victory. Stephen was a leader in the early church, and they've killed him. They've taken out part of the enemy. They've killed him for his faith, for his teaching, for his ministry, just like they killed the one he followed, Jesus Christ. So they see this as a victory. They're slowly eliminating the enemy. But on the other side, that of the Christians in church, they will come to see how God uses even Stephen's death for good. It's a fulfillment of what Paul writes later on in Romans 8:28. And we know, we have that certainty of knowledge. We know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. What we're going to see beginning this morning and moving forward is that God will use the death of Stephen for a greater good. He would take something horrible and use it for good, for his glory, and for the joy of his people in the church. We're reminded of what Joseph told his brothers. What man meant for evil, God meant for good. What those religious leaders did